Anyway, that is not my goal in life at all.
At all. Speaking about goals,
Oh,
Mhm.
how's your goals going this year so far?
I have a little notebook here that Miss Nikki Aningo
Oh.
gave me, and I wrote down my 2024 resolutions. And so far, they have not come into fruition yet, but I believe they will. So,
Amen.
yeah.
My question is to every year we all have our New Year's resolutions.
Hmm.
Um, in the past, how does that usually work out for you? Once you start in January and you evaluate in December, how do you usually do with those resolutions? Is this something that you are usually successful with, or is it something that you kind of forget about after January, or what's your usual experience, guys, with these resolutions?
I'll go first. So I think when I was younger, I would put in resolutions and not really have any kind of plan. And I think last year was the first year where I actually wanted to reach a lot of them, like, and actually be serious about keeping up with them. So that's why I came up with the idea of making that group with you, David, being David, me, Waterloo, and Sam, our other two friends, where we would talk every month about the goals. Because I think when you're not paying attention to what you set earlier, it's very easy to neglect. Like, and I came upon this realization a little bit when I was reading, and I was thinking about it a bit more. I'm like, wow, this concept can really apply to a lot of stuff. Like when you're reading a book, the story is there, right? But if you if you set like a goal, like, okay, the book is what, 30 chapters. If I read X amount of chapters per day, you know you're gonna finish the book on a certain date, right?
Hmm.
But if you kind of enter a book like not really caring when you're gonna finish, I feel like the chances of you finishing are probably a lot lower, just because there's no daily like check-in or accountability that you're holding yourself to that's gonna put you on the path to finish the book. You could technically still finish the book, but you're gonna finish it a lot faster and probably enjoy it a lot more because you're in on the story every day. You get what I'm saying? You're always involved versus you dip in and out. And you know how when you're reading a book and you read it for like you read like a week straight and then you just like check out of it, maybe it's boring, and then you try and get back into like the following month or the following month after that. You kind of even be forgetting details of the book. Like you forget the characters, why are they in this certain position, and you gotta go back and like
Mm.
figure out. Literally, I feel like that applies to life too. Like when you're not like on that stuff, even if it's the smallest page, even if it's a sentence a day, you're making some kind of forward progress. But if you
Yeah.
like step out of that little piece by piece and you try and re-enter, you gotta like start from square one again, and you gotta reset over and over. So I feel like a lot of that applies too, and that's my new mentality when it comes to goals and other things like books, because I'm really bad book reader. Like I used to at least open a book, and I literally, what I would do is when I start getting bored, I would count how many pages I have left to finish the book, and I'll actually
Mm.
get overwhelmed that there's so many pages that I would check out mentally. But
Yeah.
now what I do is I look at the chapter I'm on and I'm like, okay, how many pages do I need to finish these two chapters? And it makes
Yeah.
it a lot more manageable in my mind. And I've found like the progress of my reading is like multiplied just for that little reason. So
Mhm.
anyway, I used to view it one way when I was, like prior to last year, and after last year and this year too, I've learned that breaking things down into pieces really actually helps. Like people say it's like a, what is it called, a cliche, but it's the
Mhm.
truth.
Yeah.
I agree.
That
I
was a
think
word.
Look at you.
or I
Maybe
think
you
that's
could
our clip.
maybe you could start a cult.
Huh?
Honestly,
Why you
that's
had
a
to take
great
it?
Don't
that's a
spoil
great
this.
cult leader right there.
Like
Not
The
I'm
blood.
mesmerized. I'm just like,
we
I
was
oh,
agree.
locked in. We was tuned in.
you
Come
could be a life
join.
Amara,
coach.
you were
Come
preaching,
join.
bro. And I think one thing you emphasized was the difference that you made is really just the planning aspect too.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times having a goal, especially those big ones, like I want to make this amount or I want to make this change in myself, are
Hmm.
such big like changes that if you
Yeah,
don't have any plan or like way of executing it, it's gonna quickly fall off. And that's why I think a
Yeah.
lot of people's resolutions fall off quickly.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
agree. Um, Honestly, this year I kind of started off not on the right foot. Usually like the last couple weeks in December, you're like, all right, let me get my goals down, let me do this, let me do that.
Hmm. Hmm.
I felt like I started all that late. And I was like really beating myself up, like, dang, I was supposed to start this, in December. Because they say you're supposed to start a little bit early, get the ball rolling. And I was beating myself up to the point where I was like stuck. And I'm like, well, I'm already on the wrong foot. I'm not gonna do anything to get myself back on track. Then I was like, girl, you was too grown to be having that kind of self-deprecating talk. So what I did before I did my goals for the whole year, I just made a to-do list. I feel like to-do lists are very, very effective for me because I love that satisfaction of checking something off. So that list had like very, very specific things like meal prep for the first week back to work, or buy myself a new bedspread, or just very, very small but
Yeah.
specific task just for the month of January. Do you know that I finished everything on that list in the first 2 weeks? Just because I love that momentum of, okay, next thing, next thing, next thing. So I decided I'm going to break up every month just like that. I still have my overarching goals, like, okay, the grand scheme of things, but when I break it down in a monthly thing, it makes it so much more digestible and I actually get way more done. So for those of you that struggle with like that stamina, having a list is like a game changer for me.
I definitely agree as well. Were you gonna say something for me?
Yeah. I definitely agree with that list making thing. I lost my train of thought. Like I literally made a list, like especially now since my days are full of time, I need some sort of structure to my day. So I will
Mm,
make like mini goals for my day. But one thing, like two things that when Nikki was talking, it popped up on my mind. I used to be really heavy on like, I need to start my goals on the first of the month, first of the year, first da, da, da. But I realized like it doesn't necessarily have to be the first of the year. I feel
mhm.
like that's just like society, like stigma, like, okay, it's a new year, we start off new. I feel like the day you really commit to reach towards your goal can be any day. It would be nice if you start on the first day of the year, but like if it takes you February 1st, February 13th, March 6th, like as long as you start a day one and start working towards your goals, it's good. One.
Mhm.
Two, a New Year's resolution thing, like me and my family always did, is like our mom always like first week of the year, she would always sit us all down, me and my siblings, and she'd always give us notebooks and she would tell us to break down what goals we wanted in like 4 categories. So like school, financially, career, and spiritually. And she would tell us to write down like 10 things each. Did I follow them? No, I was only 16 at the time. I'm like, I don't even know how I'm gonna do most of these things, right? But I feel like a lot of people make goals in their head, and because it's in their head and it's not down on like paper, something that they could actually see, they
Mhm.
forget about that goal very easily, or it's just not really relevant. You know how many thoughts we have in a day, like our brain goes through. So I feel
Yeah.
like I'm a big proponent of you have to write it down. I have so many notebooks, like you have to write it down to remind yourself because humans literally always forget. So,
Yeah, I
And
really,
if
really. Oh,
oh,
sorry, I'll go first. Fee, like I actually the first point and the second point, I very much agree because especially with the writing down things because I have to write everything down because I procrastinate and like I need to have some sort of order to be able to get even just the littlest task off sometimes because
right.
I'll probably be like, oh, I'll get to it, but end up not doing it.
Yeah,
Even at work, when I'm precepting people, like I always say, like write down things that you need to do or write down your thoughts, whatever you need to do, so
right.
you can look back and review it. Or else, like you said, humans we like to forget.
yes.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
feels so good to look back in those 1,000 notebooks you have. I have goals from 2017, 2018. I'm like, dang, I really did that. Like,
Yep.
when you go back and look at how far you've
Mhm.
come, it really motivates you for the next year. And one
Yep.
thing I started doing in high school was like, I had this little box, and every time something good happened to me in my life, I would just write a little slip of paper put it in there with the date, put it inside the box. Then at the end of the year, I will open it up and like look back and be like, oh my God, this was really good. This was really good. And I did that because it made me start taking more time to be grateful. Because, like, even when you go at that end of the year, you might look at your list and be like, dang, I didn't do this, this, and this. But these are all the moments that I have to celebrate. So it's kind of like a good way to balance that, like motivation, but then also reflection and being grateful, intentionally grateful
Yeah.
about the things you accomplished.
Yes. Something's being said that resonated with me was like you should write it down. As soon as you said that, it reminded me of a quote by, I don't know if it's by Denzel Washington specifically, but he said it. I don't know if he was quoting someone else, but he said, "Don't be afraid to fail big, to dream big. But remember, dreams without goals are just dreams, and they ultimately fuel disappointment." So
Mm.
I actually think that's super real because as long as that idea or whatever remains trapped in your mind, I call it a dream really because you can't plan out that to that level of detail without sitting down with yourself and asking yourself a bunch of questions on how can I make this like a reality for myself.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I feel like for me, a lot of my early 20s was that like I was thinking constantly thinking about things, pondering about things, just pondering all the time. And then I would get to the end of the year, be like, damn, I wanted to do this, I wanted to do this and that. And it would just feel like, man, like, will this ever happen? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I saw that shift when I started documenting and putting that like idea to paper. It even helped me convince myself that I believe that that's what I wanted. I think that's another thing too. If it
Mm.
remains in your mind, you can easily like trick yourself out of it with a bunch of like excuses or a bunch of like logic that
Right.
says, oh, like it's not gonna work. Like say you want to learn how to cook or bake or something like that, and you could, if it just stays in your mind, you could even like convince yourself that's not even what you want. If you it stays there long enough, you'd be like, oh well, I'm busy with work or blah blah
Yeah.
blah. I have this and that on my schedule. I don't even have like all of the proper pots and pans. I don't even have a cutting knife, and then you just can immediately dismiss those thoughts. But I think writing it down really helps your mind understand the fact that it's really what you want. Like it
Yeah.
may
Yeah.
not be like it may not look like it can happen, but that is what you want. That's really what you want out of it. So
Right.
yeah, I really resonated with that one, that point.
I saw a TikTok. I think I sent it to you guys, and I think it goes like hand in hand with like goals as well. And it was like two people want to start like rock climbing, right? And one of them, he goes buys rock climbing shoes. He joins a local rock climbing gym. He starts rock climbing. He's like, "Oh, these shoes are kind of uncomfortable." And he talks to someone like, "Hey, my shoes are uncomfortable. Do you have any recommendations?" And he gets new shoes. They feel better. He's climbing more. He's like, "Oh, I've climbed all these. I need to find a different gym, a higher mountain." And he's just climbing and he comes great at rock climbing. The other person, they research best rock climbing gym, best rock climbing shoes, best rock climbing, read a book about rock climbing, and then they just sit there and
Yeah.
never execute. So what I took from that is like a lot of people do have goals, right? But they're afraid to like
Take
not
action.
not be good at first. I feel like we like instant gratification a lot, and when we start we should be, and I'm talking about myself too. I feel like when I start something I should be at the best at it like immediately, and
Mhm.
it's like discouraging when you fail like off rip. You're like, I don't want to do this anymore, like what's the point of doing this? But like as I grow, it's like it's that journey of you becoming better that you can look back and be like, oh, look at all the progress I made. So I
Yeah.
feel like with goals, people go really off of motivation versus like discipline. Like they want the results now instead of like, okay, I'm gonna get there and keep my eye on the goal. But most people are like, I should have that immediately. So yeah.
That's something I struggled with a lot when I first started teaching. Like the first 3 or 4 months were really hard because I was like, what am I doing wrong? Like they like me. I'm a nice teacher. Like, what is it that's not working? Why are they still bad? It
Mhm.
wasn't until I sat down with myself and said, well, what are you doing differently? Like you're going to work doing the same thing. but you expect them to have different behavior. And then now today is January what, 23rd?
Yeah.
I haven't had a bad day at work since like November, because I intentionally started trying new things every day. Even if it's like, okay, we're gonna line up 5 minutes early, or we're gonna put a fun picture on the board. Like I started doing one thing differently every single day, and I'll
Mhm.
take note of it. This worked, this didn't, and I'll keep implementing more things, because I realized I can't just sit there and complain. Oh my God, they don't listen, they don't do this, they don't do that. But I'm not doing nothing different. So it goes the same with like personal life, your spiritual life. You want to get closer to God, you don't pray, you don't read your
Yeah.
Bible.
Yeah.
How are you gonna do that? You know?
Yeah. You can
Yeah.
watch all the sermons, you can read all the books, or you can do all this, but if you don't really take action, goals are not really, are they now dreams, I feel like, still, if you
Yeah.
don't take any action with that goal?
Why do you
Because a
think
lot of our
people
goals
don't
come
take?
from,
Sorry,
sorry, go
sorry.
ahead.
I was just gonna say,
I'm sorry.
why do you think people don't take action?
Because of other
Fear.
people, fear of judgment, I feel like.
Do you think like that's amplified in today's day?
Oh,
Most
for sure.
definitely. Most definitely. Honestly, we could have all been influencers making
Yep.
money by now, right?
Yep.
The fact that we're even doing
Really?
this, I think so. Like if back in the early like 2010s,
Uh,
if we were just doing stuff
right.
without like
Yes. Yes.
fear of other people, it's good that we're doing our podcast now. People come up to us, they talk to us about the podcast. Oh, ha ha he, but like that's a step we've taken. You did not take that step. So it's
Yeah.
Mm,
like you're seeing the beginning stages. People are saying, oh, it's kind of awkward, it's kind of weird. You're seeing our mistakes and fumbles, but eventually you see our breakthrough. You know what I
mm,
mean? But people are so fixated on the fact that people are going to talk about me. People are going to, and especially because now everything is on social media. I love social media. I have a love-hate relationship with it because it can be your savior and it can be your enemy at the same time. Jesus is my savior, but in this context, this is what I mean. So I feel like when people get out of ego and pride, you can do so many more things when you take yourself out of the situation. One thing I've tried to do is like, what would future Fiend think about this? Would future Fiend enjoy this? If you think of yourself like as another person, like a friend you're doing something for, I feel like your goals will go so much further, in my opinion.
I
yeah.
also do it the opposite way too. Like,
With
what am I doing to make my childhood self happy? And if you operate from that standpoint all the time, you might not always get the results you want.
yeah,
But it's good to have a balance. Think about your future self and your childhood self. Because ultimately, I feel like your childhood self is who you truly are deep
yeah,
down. Like, that's your core. So if you do one thing today that makes that you happy, you're doing something right.
Yeah. I think with social media too, um, it's a tricky thing. I think back in the days before any of this internet, social media stuff existed, Feeney is
yeah,
right. You could do something like this, and you would just be so insulated from judgment.
yeah,
Like you're still gonna get judged within your immediate circle, but like the world can't really judge you. You're just gonna be insulated. So you have that luxury of incubation where you're kind of in a contained place where you can just perfect whatever it is you're doing or
yeah,
refine it in your own way without any outside influences. But I think once you introduce a social media and the element of like the fear of being perceived as like try like someone who's trying,
mhm,
the pressure is a lot greater because it's the whole world that is obviously gonna be witnesses to your efforts, your attempts.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, that's why I say it's a love because it's a luxury too because you have the ability to see people who are like you who have done it. So then you
yeah,
Mhm.
have like examples that are not so huge. Like back in the day you would look it was the people on the TV where you're like,
yeah,
okay, I want to be like them on TV. But now it's like they're not on TV, but they're really doing really well and they're making a lot of money and they're very fulfilled and they love what they're doing and they had
yeah,
to work. You can actually see their progress from the day they started and to the day maybe they started trying more and the day they started trying more and you can then see you can watch back. So I
yeah,
like in that sense you have the luxury of it, but it has that other downside too. So I think honestly like everything these days you have to negotiate how you approach it. Like you have to come at it with intention, and I think you can get something good out of it. But if you don't, it can definitely make you hesitant or apprehensive to do anything like grand.
Yeah, like that guy who's been recording himself in Target, that people been clowning. Like this man really set up
Oh
a
yes,
tripod.
Drew. He's
He
literally a
got
perfect
mad.
example.
He got mad money for
Yes,
ESPN for going to Target. Like if he would have stopped and was like, "All right, I'm done posting
Yeah.
on," like that would have been the
he's a
end. Like
perfect example.
so, it's just like people are gonna flame you at the end of the day, but like, and then what?
Right.
How y'all feel about vision boards?
I like them. Let me tell you why.
I feel like it's trendy.
It is trendy. I had a vision board for 2023. Half of those things on my vision board, I put as my screensaver, it came true. I put a vision board for an